Come to DSW for the shoes, stay for the fun. Because let's be honest, if shoe shopping isn't fun, are you even doing it right? So go ahead, try something new. Try something different. Good different. Try something that feels like you. You know, the real you. And then definitely brag about it later. Because at DSW, you've got unlimited freedom to play. With sneakers, boots, and everything in between for every style, mood, and occasion, you'll definitely find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW. Let us surprise you.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Ever felt defeated by cravings? You're not alone. Henry Meds is here to help support your weight management journey.
Since I joined 4 months ago, I've lost 25 pounds and it has changed my life.
Henry Meds' personalized compounded GLP-1 meds shipped to your door. Take back control with treatments designed to reduce appetite. Schedule a free online evaluation with a licensed provider at henrymeds.com/audio and get $100 off your first month. Results may vary. Not all patients are eligible. Compounded medications are not FDA approved. Consult a healthcare provider to determine if treatment is right for you.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we recap the Norfolk Tides, rounding out our minor league recaps here as we look back at the highs and lows of the Orioles AAA affiliates 2025 season. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, we want to start off with the Orioles announcing their postseason awards for the 2025 season for player development. Now, these are separate from our own awards, which we're going to announce in an episode later on this week. But this is something we always like to talk about each year when the Orioles give out these awards. The top minor league player as chosen by the Orioles this year is outfielder Nate George, while Trey Gibson wins pitcher of the year. And I think that Gibson's winning this award is not a surprise at all, given his success over the last few months. But George is an interesting choice for player of the year. The one thing, though, to note is that if you look at the candidates who spent all season in the minor leagues, you're really only looking, in my mind, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about this, a two-person race between Nate George and Aaron Estrada. Now, there have been times in the past that the Orioles have given these awards to players who have spent at least a portion of the season in the major leagues, but in general, it kind of feels like a preference that they don't give out the awards to players who are in the major leagues, which probably explains why Samuel Basallo or Dylan Beavers did not get this award. But credit to Nate George for a fantastic season, which we'll talk about a little bit here and on our episode later this week. But Nick, I'll start with you. I know these are not our awards, but I know our listeners pay attention to them. They care about them. We follow them year in and year out. What are your thoughts on George and Gibson as the Orioles honorees this year?
Yeah, I think the Jim Palmer Award going to Gibson was a lock. We're going to reference a lot of great pitching performances in our own award segment, and maybe even some in the Norfolk segment as we recap the Tide season. But we could do 3 hours on just the good pitching performances this year. But Gibson, not to go into too much detail because I'm sure he's going to get some honors later on again, but top strikeout arm in the system, at least raw strikeout totals. I think he had 166, which led the way. Established himself, in my opinion, at least, as the top pitching prospect in the organization as of right now. And hopefully he can translate that to the big league success next year. The Nate George pick, that was definitely shocking. But, I guess not really, if you think about it, because if you're excluding Basallo and Beavers, then like you said, Estrada stood out. Maybe you make a case for Austin Overn. Not a whole lot. Nobody separated themselves statistically. But as far as player development is concerned, Nate George was obviously pretty huge this year. So I feel like the Orioles, and not to take anything away from Nate George here in winning this, he totally deserved it. But you have to imagine the organization feels pretty good being able to roll out hey, we're known for producing our hitters. Here's a teenager who we drafted in the 16th round last year, and in his first year, he is our minor league player of the year. So I think that's all around good. Just another opportunity to showcase Nate George there. But 3 levels, first pro year. He definitely earned that, and it's cool to see.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise for sure, especially because, I mean, Basayo seems like the slam dunk choice, but then he got his prize by getting a 9-year contract, I suppose. He did have a 151 WRC plus in AAA over 321 plate appearances. And then, if not him, Beavers had a 153 WRC plus over 418 plate appearances in AAA. But again, I guess he's eligible for the Rookie of the Year next year. He's making big league money. So, like you said, it's between Estrada and George, and between high A and double A. Estrada had a 135 WRC plus in 443 plate appearances, and George had a 159 WRC plus over 370 plate appearances between the FCL low A and high A. George a year younger than Aaron Estrada. I don't know. It's a tough call. It's a really tough call, but I think it's a cool thought to give it to George just because, like Nick said, yeah, he has certainly come out of nowhere. Great development story, success story for the late round pick, and to become probably a top 100 prospect in baseball at some point in 2026. It's a nice nod to him for sure. And then for Trey Gibson, yeah, I think it was the obvious pick, mostly because he's the guy that had the most success and was the most healthy all at the same time. Other guys obviously flashed here and there or had some shorter stints on the injury list, but Gibson was able to do it and at AAA on the doorstep of the majors. So hats off to him. I think it's well deserved for both guys.
Yeah, with George, I think that if you're going to look at players who spent the whole season in the minor leagues, and again, I don't know that is the criteria for the Orioles, but I do think it's a preference based on some of the recent winners. You can go back to 2022 when they went with Jordan Westburg over Gunnar Henderson. That's an example that jumps out in my mind. If you're going to look at players who not only spent the full season in the minors, but in the case of Basayo and Beavers, didn't have over a month in the major leagues at the end of the season, I think George is absolutely a great choice. And, if you want to highlight the work of your player development staff, I can't really think of a better instance than picking a teenager who was not getting a lot of hype coming into the season, basically getting little to no coverage nationally that I saw, and putting up a great season across 3 levels and looking like a 5 or 5-ish tool player along the way. And there's not a lot of position players in the Orioles system right now that have that kind of profile. And George will probably start next season at high A and probably be primed for another big year.
Yeah, I'm trying to look too and see if like anyone else was justifiable here. And I mean, in terms of like, you want to highlight a prospect, right? So it's like VML Machine had a good year, but you're not going to give it to him. TT Bowens, Reed Trimble, they had good years, but like they're going to also use this to highlight, like you said, the player development. And yeah, so in that instance, I do think Nate George was a right pick here, a good pick. Again, if you're excluding Basayo and Beaver. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. I think some of the other guys, just injuries, some of the other guys that could have competed for this, like Enrique Bradfield Jr. missing a big chunk of the year and such, just injuries as a whole wiping out a lot. But at least on the pitching side, I think Gibson was the runaway winner, but like there's definitely right behind him. I think, as we'll get into when we talk about our own awards, like picking like a number 2 and a number 3, there's a group of like 5, 6, 7 guys you could choose from. So still overall a pretty good year. Again, don't want to take anything away from George. Don't want to make it sound like this is a down year or anything. But yeah, strong performances.
Let's jump in now to our recap of the Norfolk Tides season. Tim Federowicz was a manager of this Tides squad that finished the season 63-84. And while there were some struggles along the way, we also saw some positives from individual performances. And like we do with all of our recaps, we're going to look into the hitting and pitching side of the equation and break these players down a little bit. I want to start with the hitters because this is where the bigger name guys came through. Specifically Samuel Basayo and Dylan Beavers. Basayo played 76 games with the Tides this year, hitting .270 with a .966 OPS and 23 home runs, all the while not facing a pitcher younger than him at the AAA level. Meanwhile, Beavers in 94 games with Norfolk hit .304 with a .934 OPS, 18 home runs. He also walked 68 times while striking out just 76 times in 418 plate appearances. Both of those players ended up playing their way to the big leagues and getting substantial playing time when they joined the Orioles in August, and in the case of Basayo, getting a long-term contract extension along the way. And I think in the case of Beavers, definitely solidifying himself in the Orioles outfield plans for 2026. So this, if you want to look at the highlight of the Tides roster this season, I think you can start with these two guys. And Bob, it was interesting to see the progression for both players this year. Beavers got off to a little bit of a slow start, then caught fire and never slowed down. Basayo himself got off to a little bit of a slow start, had an injury that cost him time, but when he was back and fully healthy, picked up and just dominated from there.
Yeah, and Beavers, his slow start was like literally 5 to 10 games. Like it was not very long at all, less than 2 weeks. And yeah, clearly put in some really solid work over the offseason. It did seem like they were pretty high on him in spring training just because he got into a lot of games. I feel like he was there starting games. He was on the spring training roster longer than I would have expected him to be based on his 2024 numbers. Seemed like he was performing pretty well as well. So I was trying to keep an eye out for him. Then he got off to that slow start for a while. But then after that, I mean, everything just clicked into place. And you see the player that's put himself into a top 100 list for all three of the lists to make him eligible for the Rookie of the Year PPI draft pick in 2026. Got to think with his performance, the way he's flashed here early in his career, he's going to be one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year, I would imagine, along with Basayo. So love that for him. Definitely some gaffes on defense here and there, but I think he's even improved in that regard. His fielding looks better to me from the eye test. Yeah, he's just great at bats. Takes a lot of pitches, takes a lot of walks, good plate discipline, but not afraid to pop one here and there. Even much better against left on left. But then Basayo, yeah, he had a little bit of a slow start too, but man, when he is hot, I don't know if there's anyone, at least in 2025 in minor league baseball, that's as dangerous as he was this season, because he was hitting the ball hard with authority in the air, with frequency. 20 years old, turned 21, right? Not too long ago. So just a special kid at the time of this recording. He was just hit in the hand/wrist area and didn't look good. So hopefully he's fine, or at least not too bad, even if he has to miss the rest of the week here for the season. But man, just huge breakouts. We knew Basayo was coming. I think that's the one we saw from a mile away, from years away. So that was nice to see. But the Dylan Beavers thing was definitely a surprise to me, and a pleasant one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping that Beavers is going to turn things around. You understand that this is a project, and his hitting development being chronicled, but to see him to come out of the gate slow, like we talked about, that strikeout rate was 40 something percent, just not hitting the ball. And I feel like it might have been specifically like a series when they went to Omaha. Didn't he have 2 home runs in a game? I think it was 2 home runs in his first 2 at bats or something. I feel like that was probably one of the bigger sparks he had this year. It was just an insane season down there in AAA. And yeah, just to see him, I mean, to talk about the major league side of things, did he hit one of his 3 home runs? Didn't they come off a lefty already at the big league level?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It did. So he's got a left on left home run. He's always been, he went 2+ years without hitting a home run off a lefty in the minor leagues, but he hit for a good average and continued to get on base against lefties. It's not that he can't hit lefties. He absolutely can. He's just never shown any power against lefties. So good to see him get that one in the big leagues. A 134 WRC plus in your first 30 big league games. It was a real breath of fresh air for Beavers. Yeah, Basayo, the numbers aren't strong. He's a young kid getting adjusted and being thrust behind the plate probably a little bit more than the Orioles had planned to do with him, and probably what he was prepared for, even though I'm sure based on what we know about his personality, he embraced that challenge. But it was still probably not the game plan. And so, yeah, the numbers don't pop, but he got that extension. That's where all the excitement was. With Beavers, I'll gladly take this play. I mean, the walks have translated. He's walking at a near 20% clip in this range. Yeah, you found yourself a corner outfielder out there for sure. which is, did not see this type of season coming either for Beavers. And you figure maybe a platoon guy, maybe he still is like strong side of platoon and only predominantly faces right-handers, but the breath of fresh air was that there really was no like adjustment period in the big leagues. He came up and from the jump, he kind of is taken off. And so that was based on the long history of hitters and how they're performing when they come up to the big leagues for the Orioles. Considering Dylan Beavers was one of the first ones to hit like this from the jump and sustain it, is one, pretty surprising, but also very welcoming.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to come into this season assuming Heston Kjerstad is going to establish himself as a corner outfielder. He is a complete bust this year. I think there are obviously extenuating circumstances because he has completely disappeared from the map. They haven't given an update, but it's just nice to be able to say, man, for the first time, really, we have one of these guys come up and not perform, but then you have someone that kind of comes out of nowhere and can take his place as leaving this season, as assuming he's going to be one of the, at least play a role on the corner outfield. I mean, maybe they'll make some upgrades and give him a little more protection, but yeah, it's a great thing.
I want to shift over to a guy that's also been contributing in the major leagues over the last couple months, and that's Jeremiah Jackson. Now, if you listened to our Chesapeake recap last week, you probably noticed that we didn't talk about Jeremiah Jackson. And if we did, it was very brief. And that's because Jackson started the year at AA and he was fine. He was a steadying presence at shortstop in what was otherwise, with other than him and Creed Willems, a lineup that was riddled with injuries and where the guys that were healthy were struggling. He ends up getting promoted to AAA, and it's like, all right, that was interesting to see Jackson do fine at AA, but is it really going to sustain itself at the next level? And turns out he was actually a much better hitter at AAA this season than he was at AA. 40 games with the Bay, 45 games with the Bay Sox, he had a 93 WRC plus. In 40 games with the Tides, that figure went all the way up to 182, and it came alongside a 377 batting average, 400 on base percentage, and 673 slugging percentage. It earned him a promotion to the major leagues, where in his time with the Orioles, I think he has done everything that he can do to show that he belongs on this roster next year, barring some big acquisition for a utility player, which I don't see happening this offseason. So this was, to me, one of the more interesting breakout stories that flew under the radar throughout the year because, Nick, I'll go back to you here because you kept pointing this out. When you looked at Jeremiah Jackson's StatCast card in AAA, all of the offensive metrics were either in the red, which means they were elite, or they were in the blue, which means they were pretty low percentile. There was no middle ground with Jeremiah Jackson. But credit to him because he hit his way to the major leagues this year, having most of that success at Norfolk, and he looks like he belongs in the big leagues right now.
Yeah, that's who he is. He's going to strike out. He's not going to walk, and he's going to chase. Like that's just who he is. Not the only guy like that we're going to talk about tonight, but yeah, he can stay for sure. Like I've said before, it was a guy I paid zero attention to when he was in AA. He just felt like it was a minor league depth signing because who was going to play the infield, specifically the middle infield in AA? There weren't a lot of options, so figured, all right, this is just a dude they're bringing in, and even when he was in AA, it was just a dude. It was league average, a little below league average, and pretty much everything. You're like, yep, that's his role. That's why he was signed. And I don't know what switch was flipped. I don't know what magic Mike Monville performed down there in AAA, but shout out to him. We'll talk about him again later on as well. But shout out to him. Shout out to whoever worked with Jeremiah Jackson. Gets credit there. It clicked. And yeah, he took off like a rocket ship in AAA, and it's been pretty well. I mean, you're looking at a 119 WRC plus, almost a one-WAR player, 5 home runs in 44 games at the major league level with the Orioles. As this part-time guy, they're moving around in the outfield. Of course, defensively, he's not maybe shining anywhere, but he can get the job done. And so, yeah, I think for the role that you want him to serve next year, I hope he sticks around, and I hope he's in an Orioles uniform next year.
Yeah, I think he will be. I think he kind of combines, I think I've said this before on here, but he kind of combines the strengths of a Ramon Arias with the strengths of a Jorge Mateo, minus the just pure speed, in the fact that he can well, they're trying to get him to be able to play a corner outfield spot. He can play the infield. And yeah, what a season. A 93 WRC plus through 189 plate appearances in AA. And it's just like, yeah, I was not paying attention to him at all. And I pretty much pay attention to everybody. And he's just like, ho-hum, let me go up to AAA, walk less, and go from 4.8% walk rate to 3.5, but strike out 5% less from 16.4 to 11.7, double my ISO and double my WRC plus, and then make it all the way to the majors. And he still never has cooled off. His walk rate's actually 6.3% after taking a walk tonight. So I don't know. Maybe that's like the last piece of the puzzle is, all right, here's what happens when you're aggressive and you're really trying to just impact the ball. Boom. You see the slugging percentage, the ISO goes up. Maybe now the trick is get him. Okay, now you know you can do that. Let's just not chase the very out of the zone pitches, because I think that's pitchers are going to go further and further out until he gives them a reason not to. So, yeah, I think he's not going to be like a starter for this team, but I don't see why he can't be a platoon infield, outfield, comes in against lefties, occasional starts against righties, bench player. Yeah, I think what a great find from just a minor league signing that nobody noticed when it happened to a guy you're penciling in as a bench player on I'm assuming is going to be a playoff contending 2026 team.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like aloe or skins, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skins uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Come to DSW for the shoes, stay for the fun. Because let's be honest, if shoe shopping isn't fun, are you even doing it right? So go ahead, try something new. Try something different. Good different. Try something that feels like you. You know, the real you. And then definitely brag about it later. Because at DSW, you've got unlimited freedom to play. With sneakers, boots, and everything in between for every style, mood, and occasion, you'll definitely find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW, let us surprise you.
Go to a different player now who had a much different season. It was really a tale of two seasons for Jud Fabian. From the beginning of the Tides season in late March up until late June, Fabian had a year that by his standards and knowing the kind of player he is, could be considered a reasonable success. The batting average had been hovering in the 220s, most of the time strikeout rate in the high 20s, low 30s, but he was drawing walks. He was hitting for power, and the strikeout rate had made a big step forward after he whiffed 40.8% of the time in 30 games after being promoted to AAA in 2024. Then he goes on the IL on June 26, and this is the clear benchmark in Jud Fabian's season where things start to turn in the wrong direction. After a 3-game rehab assignment with Aberdeen, he returned to Norfolk on July 29th, and leading up to going on the IL, in 65 games, Fabian had hit .221 with a .332 on-base percentage, .441 slugging percentage, and 12 home runs. From July 29th on, in 44 games, he hit .124 with a .309 on-base percentage, .204 slugging, and 3 home runs. Now, you look at the final numbers for Fabian this season, and they're a bit underwhelming. 87 WRC plus in 109 games of the Tides, 16.7% walk rate compared to a 31.6% strikeout rate and a 183 batting average. With Judd Fabian's profile, and this is a profile he has had since his days at Florida, you know that he's not going to hit for high average. He's going to strike out a lot, but he's going to walk enough and hit for enough power that when you combine it with his center field defense, he's going to be a good player. That's the Judd Fabian we saw pre-injury this season. After he got back, though, he just kind of looked lost at the plate. So my question to you guys would really be, which Judd Fabian is the real Judd Fabian? And how does this affect the Orioles' decision of whether or not to protect him this offseason? Because this is going to be his first time Rule 5 eligible. For the first 3 months of this year, he looked like he had a really strong chance to be protected with a 40-man roster spot in the offseason. If not, make the major leagues before the season ended. But now we're sitting here after the conclusion of the season. I don't know that I can say that that's the case anymore.
Will the first half Judd Fabian please stand up? I think that's the real Judd Fabian, because it was a wrist injury, I believe. I can't remember if he was hit by a pitch or just hurt it somehow. But my reason for thinking that the second half, basically just awful performance, is injury related is because pre-injury he was walking 14.5%, great, was striking out 28% around, pretty good, ISO 221. And then after the injury, he's walking more, 20%, which to me says he's swinging less, 35% strikeout rate. And if he's swinging less, then he has to swing later. And with his swing and miss, that's going to lead the strikeout rate to go up. The ISO tanks to 0.81. His BABIP was also pretty low, 215 compared to 265 in the pre-injury days. But to me, it just seemed like the injury had him not swinging the bat as much, maybe not swinging with as much authority. Maybe they just figured, I mean, they had to know it was bothering him, but maybe they just figured, look, you're going to get your reps either way. We understand you're not at full capacity, but I think if he has a full offseason to get completely healthy again, I would fully expect him to be back to that first half Judd Fabian, which is, again, not like this huge bat, but at least he had a 107 WRC plus. And when you combine that with legit center field defense with a great arm, that's a really valuable player. So hopefully that is the case, but that is my belief.
Yeah, clearly the numbers were dreadful this year, and I do think the injury is pretty valid. New dad, got the new baby as well. Just a lot there, but yeah, I think as a guy off the bench, you talk about the very good defense in center field, the super strong arm, someone you feel really good about as a late game defensive replacement. He's an athlete, like it's 60 grade speed, but he hasn't used that produce stolen bases over the last really 2 years. But like that's still an asset. I think what he does well, he does very well. 99th percentile walk rate in AAA this year. He doesn't chase, 83rd percentile in chase rate. He's going to force you to throw a strike. Now, when you throw a strike, it's a 70-30 shot. He makes contact on that pitch. But when he does make contact, it's 111 max EV, nearly 112, super high barrel rates. The pull side damage is pretty insane, well above average. The bat, I think, is as long as he can make contact, the bat can be like a late inning, game changing. You need a late 8th, 9th inning home run. Judd Fabian can give that to you. So I do think he can be a valuable asset for you in the major leagues. Again, it was first percentile in zone contact rate in AAA this year. So yes, there are major questions like, is he going to make contact? But when he does, he can change the trajectory of a game late in the game. So yeah, we'll see what this offseason looks like. I am very curious. I know there was discussion like, all right, well, you got Judd Fabian or Reed Trimble. Do you protect one or the other? Do you protect neither? Like, do you let Judd Fabian maybe leave him out there and take the risk on not protecting him? We'll get into the Rule 5 stuff, I feel like, in a couple of weeks here. But yeah, I do think that makes for an interesting discussion. But I talked about this at the very beginning of the year. I think like nobody's expectations of Judd Fabian, I feel like has been like out of control. I feel like they've all been very managed and tempered. Like everyone understands who Judd Fabian can be. I don't think any of us foresee him ever being a everyday major league starter. And there's not even, I don't even think the splits, lefty righty splits, are even like that drastic of a difference either. So it's not like, oh, he can be like strong side platoon player either. But as a fourth, fifth outfielder, the guy who comes off the bench late in games, I think Fabian's potential, that's where his potential could shine. But yeah, there are some still major question marks, and the swing and miss I don't think is going to improve much at all. The strikeouts are still going to be there, but it's just, when he does damage, it's extremely impressive.
Look, Jose Siri was just DFA'd by the Mets, but he had a really strong first 3 years of his career, and that's basically Jeff Fabian without taking any walks. So yeah, a guy like that has really good value. As long as he's cheap, cost controlled, and has options, he's especially going to be valuable to a team like the Orioles, especially if the injuries are going to keep happening in 2026 and into the future.
Before we move over to the pitchers, I just want to give you guys a chance to shout out anything else that you saw at the Tides lineup that was good or bad that stood out to you this year. And Bob, you just touched on the situation with Heston Kjerstad, and I don't know how much we're going to talk about Kjerstad tonight because, as you alluded to, I think there's a lot of things that we don't know yet that are extenuating factors with Kjerstad. But you can look up and down the list. Reed Trimble getting 30 games in AAA after really losing a lot of time to injury the last several years was a real positive. T.T. Bowens put up good numbers with Norfolk this year. So what stood out to you guys?
I'd say those two guys, certainly. I mean, Trimble going to give Judd Fabian a run for his money as far as maybe getting protected on the 40-man roster. I think it's funny that Reed Trimble is actually a little bit older than Judd Fabian, which was kind of surprising when I noticed that. But it makes sense when you consider the injuries and everything. And T.T. Bowens, super solid first base depth to have at AAA. Great season overall, I would say. But my guy that surprised me was Silas Ardway, who we know is backup catcher capable defensively, kind of like a Maverick Hanley, if not better. But he actually performed pretty well, and he had a high BABIP, which helps out. But going from a 197 batting average in AA with a 662 OPS, where he had 12 doubles, a triple, 4 home runs, goes up to AAA and bats 258 with a 791 OPS, 4 doubles, 4 home runs, continued to walk a lot. So shout out to Silas Ardway. I just want to see, his BABIP was pretty insane when I looked earlier. Let's see what it ended up being. 345. So it came down. So a 117 WRC plus for a plus defensive catcher. Not too shabby.
Yeah, I just had those two, T.T. Bowens and Ardway. Same thing. Like Ardway is going to have a very long pro career. I think just the defensive abilities, the bat's never going to be like prominent, but like when you need him up in the majors, like I don't think that bat's going to be a black hole in your lineup. He's someone who I feel like Maverick Hanley, like the contributions go pretty underappreciated every year, but they're pretty instrumental in being an asset to the pitchers in the system. And so when you need them to step up in emergencies in the big leagues, like they're going to give you every ounce of effort they have. And maybe their impact won't be something concrete that you can like point to in a box score, but I would bet if you talk to the pitchers, like who threw that night with them behind the plate, you get the real story of their impact. So he had a really good year with the bat, all things considered. And then, yeah, T.T. Bowens, just 79 games in AAA this season, a 112 WRC plus, 16 home runs, 30 total extra base hits in those 79 games. One of the hardest mashers in AAA this year. I think he has one more year of control before hitting minor league free agency. I think it's 6 years you get, I don't know, with COVID, and I don't know if you got an extra year for that or what the deal is there, but I think he's got at least one more year in the organization before he hits minor league free agency, unless of course he's on the 40-man roster. But if he's on the 40-man roster or if he's playing in the major leagues, then that means something very bad has happened with Adley, Basayo, Kobe. Unfortunately, luckily it looks like Basayo x-rays were negative. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's timely, all things considered. Pete Fairbanks is still an uber clown, but so you hopefully T.T. Bowens, like you don't want to see him playing first base for the Orioles because again, that group of first baseman DH they have there. But an undrafted kid out of Central Connecticut State who's clawed his way through the minor leagues, I hope he gets a game. I want to see him taking at bat, get that shot with the Orioles, put on that major league uniform. He's one of those guys who, like, you could very well see him like never getting that opportunity, but he's earned it. And maybe it's with another organization. If so, great. I'll watch, I'll cheer. But yeah, he had a really fantastic year, and he should be back in Norfolk next year again in that same role as an emergency option. You could do a whole lot worse. TT Bowens is pretty solid this year.
Absolutely. We'll go over the pitchers now. And if you've listened to our show in the last few years and you've heard us talk about AAA pitching, you've heard us talk a lot about the challenges that pitchers have adjusting to AAA and how that has heightened in recent years because of the change in the baseball and because of the strike zone differences between AAA and the other levels of the minor leagues. And I think if you look at the Tides pitching staff this year, you kind of see where those challenges came into play with some guys. Now, it doesn't tell the whole story of why some players' backs, struggled a little bit this year, which we'll get into. But you look at the pitchers that had good runs in AAA. Brandon Young was really good for the Tides over 5 starts. He had pitched in AAA the year before. Cameron Weston ended up putting together a really nice season. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, just kind of a hint of what's coming at the end here. But you saw him struggle a little bit in the early portion of the season. So the sense when you come away from AAA numbers for pitchers is that the ERA and the walk totals are inflated because of these challenges. And it felt like that was really the case this year for a Tides staff that had a collective team ERA of 5.05 and finished second in the International League in walks. So some struggles here, but there were some highlights. And I think perhaps most importantly, you saw the Orioles be aggressive with some pitchers who were deserving of a shot in AAA at the end of the year and were able to get that. And maybe Trey Gibson's numbers over 7 starts weren't great. Maybe Nestor Herman had one real clunker at the AAA level, but it was still good to see them there. So there's a lot of directions that we could take this conversation in. And I do want to touch on the bullpen because I thought that there were some interesting arms there. But as you guys followed the Tides pitching staff this year, did you find yourself struggling with, okay, which pitchers are really struggling because there's some deeper issue versus there's a struggling because they're in AAA and it seems to be a systemic thing now?
Mostly the latter, I would say. But, I think also just there's better competition in AAA, and it's still not the same as the major leagues. I think that gap continues to widen, or at least has widened considerably over the last few years compared to before the COVID era when they shrunk the minor leagues. But yeah, I think it's a tough test when you go from using a complete, especially when you're promoted in the middle of the season, you don't have a whole off season to just work on a specific ball and learn how that functions with your grips and your spin and all that good stuff. So yeah, I think it's tough mid-season, especially to go from using a completely different ball, completely different strike zone, automated balls and strikes, just a completely different environment. But I think these guys at least flashed enough to show that once they like we saw it with Brandon Young, from one season to the next, you make adjustments. And off season is a great time to get to a drive line or even just the Orioles lab at MedStar and just work on things and improve. So yeah, and I think just the innings are valuable and getting that experience in, like Cameron Weston, 4.59 ERA, 135 innings pitched. I mean, that's pretty good. And yeah, his strikeout rate dropped from about 29% in 24 to 22%. And the walk rate went from a 6.5 to 7.5 range up to almost 12%. But I think especially for him, I think that shrunken strike zone and the different ABS, whatever, I think that affected him a little bit more. He doesn't have any dominant pitch, but he's got the kitchen sink that he can throw typically with good command. I actually expect him to be a little bit better if he gets a chance at the major leagues, maybe out of a bullpen role. But I think he could still be a back end starter. Trey Gibson, I mean, he was lights out all year, and yeah, strikeout rate dropped, walk rate rose a little bit in AAA. Had a 7.98 ERA, but only a 5.03 FIP and a 3.80 xFIP. So some bad luck, as we've talked about, but good experience for all these guys.
Yeah, I think as far as like the prospects, quote unquote prospects, like these guys just got a couple of outings, and so I'm not taking anything away from Levi Wells. I'm not taking much away, at least from Levi Wells and Gibson and Herman. These guys are already blown past their career high for innings by the time they get to AAA with all the changes, better competition, all of that good stuff. So it's just get up there, get your feet wet, get the experience, and you know what you got to work on for next offseason. I will pay a lot more attention come spring training and when they're back in Norfolk's rotation to start next year. If they're showing some of the same problems that crept up in their 4 outings, then we can have a different conversation. But yeah, Norfolk was led by Weston, who we're going to talk about in more detail later on. But Thaddeus Ward was second in innings. Like, okay, good job, buddy. Ronzi Contreras had a great year, but he's shipped out. Raul Alcantara logged. He had the eighth most innings on Norfolk's roster. He got released. Ragsdale, like just a lot of guys who aren't even in the organization anymore. Chase McDermott converting to the bullpen role. And of course, his outing he had in the big leagues, immediately going on the family emergency bereavement list. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if anybody has said anything, but of course, wishing all the best to McDermott and his family. I don't care what happened in that outing. If he already had some bad news, knew something was coming, I couldn't even imagine stepping up on that mound. So I'm still super pumped for Chase McDermott next year, see what he can do out of the bullpen. As far as the starters go, outside of Weston, who we're going to talk about later, there's really nothing there. But the bullpen, yeah, I got 3 guys in particular who I think really stood out. One, I'm not sure what to make of. The other 2, I know exactly what to make of. But I guess I'll just throw it out there. Keegan Gillis, first of all, talk about him, get your guys' thoughts, because he was so dominant and we were begging every time he took the mound in AA. We were begging, why is this man still in AA? Of course, he came on our show this year. Shout out to Keegan. It was a great interview. But you look at his AAA numbers specifically. AAA was pretty brutal for him overall, but there were 2 sides. He had a first month and a second month. In the first month, 9 innings, an ERA of 10. The FIP was 6, so still not good there. 8% strikeout rate to a 14% walk rate. But the second month in AAA, 13 innings, a 1.35 ERA, 27% strikeout rate to a 4% walk rate. So big changes there. And I don't know. I pulled up the TJ stats cards and broke it down month by month and did the side by side. Like, he used the fastball a lot more in the second month and threw it for a lot more strikes, 40% in zone strike rate to 51% in zone strike rate for the fastball. So a big jump there. And he got more whiffs. The whiffs jumped from 11% in that first month to 27% in the second month. But other than that, like velo, spin, release, like everything else looks pretty much identical for the rest of his stuff. So I don't know what changed. It's not just he threw more strikes with the fastball and got that type of success, but so I don't know what exactly changed. I need someone smarter than me in terms of pitch design, development, all that good stuff to break that down for me. But he did have a much stronger second month. He is Rule 5 eligible. Could he be a sneaky guy that the Orioles add to the 40-man? I don't know. I could see another team saying, hey, this is a guy who's 6'8". He had a strong final month of the year. Let's take a shot and see what he can do. But I also see very easily why you leave him unprotected and he's back in AAA next year to see if he can build on that second month. I honestly don't really know what to make of his season, though, once he got to AAA.
Yeah, it is a conundrum for sure. I could see it. I don't know. I think it will say a lot what the Orioles do. Like, I don't think it means they think he sucks if they don't add him to the 40-man roster. But if they do add him, I think that means that they like the changes or whatever they happen to be that we can't figure out that he made in that second month, and feel like he can be the guy that he was in AA more than he was in AAA. So it's going to be interesting. This is a very, very big 40-man ad offseason coming up. And even if he's not added to the 40-man, he might get taken in the Rule 5. He might not, but I mean, he might come back. So, I mean, it might be one of the guys like a Zach Pop where it's a risk they're willing to take, because at the end of the day, is Keegan Gillis going to be the closer anytime soon in Baltimore, or a super high leverage guy? I don't know about that. Maybe, but yeah, he's not. There's some other guys I think that could fit that mold a little bit better.
Yeah, and Gillis was teammates with two of them that I think are going to be competing to get 40-man roster spots, or have been competing to get 40-man roster spots, in Anthony Nunez and Cameron Foster. But there's a reasonable argument for protecting Gillis, because when you look through his game logs, and this is always where it's tricky with relievers, because you can look at a reliever's numbers and think, oh, this guy didn't have a good year. And then you can just find these one or two clunkers that just completely throw off their stat lines. And Gillis had one real bad clunker, July 23rd against Lehigh Valley, 1 inning, 5 runs, 4 earned, 1 walks, no strikeouts, 6 hits given up. That was his 4th outing in AAA. A few weeks later, August 8th against Rochester, 1 2/3 innings, 3 runs all earned, 3 hits, including a home run, with 2 strikeouts to a walk. And you look through the rest of his game log, and it's a lot of 1 inning scoreless, 2 innings, 1 run. You have a few 1 inning, 1 run outings in there, but not anything that's, really jumps out at you. But when you're looking at someone who is only throwing 33 1/3, right? Not even that, that's his AA totals. 22 1/3 innings at a level, one bad outing can really throw things off. So that's what's interesting with Gillis. I do think at the bare minimum, the Orioles have to protect him in the minor league phase. That's the absolute bare minimum they have to do, because the Orioles lost a lot of players in the minor league phase last year, and I think that's going to happen again this year. And you don't want to lose someone who could be of use to you in the big league bullpen next year. I do think that if he is protected, that does not mean that he's going to be a candidate for a bullpen job right away, but that he's an optionable reliever that they think is worth having around, they see some potential in. I think that's really what it's going to boil down to. And you could say the same with Anthony Nunez and Cameron Foster, which is why Gillis's case is so tough to pinpoint. But I don't think the Orioles would be off base protecting him.
No, certainly not. And just looking at Prospect Savant, they have all 3 of his pitches being at least average. The splitters is 99 on the Stuff Plus, and I think the fastball is 107 and the sliders 109. And again, like we've talked about recently, Stuff Plus isn't the end all be all, but it is a nice just to see the quality of the pitches. And then obviously you work on tunneling and location and all the other stuff on top of that. But I think he's got a nice baseline. We've seen the splitter with that high release be a nice weapon from a Felix Bautista. Obviously he's not Felix Bautista, but he's a guy that could be like a mini mountain in a perfect world.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like aloe or skins, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skins uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video. This week, the Seattle Seahawks face the Arizona Cardinals in an NFC West showdown. How deep will Seattle test Arizona's defense? Can Arizona wear down the Seahawks front? It'll be an exciting game to show who has the most discipline on both sides of the ball. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party, TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's the Seahawks and the Cardinals, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Well, let's talk about Anthony Nunez and Cameron Foster, the other two arms that I really want to talk about here in Norfolk. Foster, I enjoyed very much when he first came over from the Mets, and now that we can look at his full body of work, like you just look at his AAA time specifically, I think there's a very high probability he gets added to the 40-man this winter. 4 offerings all got 50 grade or higher. Fastball average 95 with 6.7 feet of extension, 18 inches of induced vertical break, good chase and whiff numbers. It's like a 90th percentile fastball in AAA this year. 97th to 99th percentile in whiff rate, end zone contact rate, called strike plus whiff percentage, chase percentage, and K to walk percentage. Like just fantastic numbers. The cutter and his curveball were the second and third most used offerings. 49% whiff rate with the cutter, 43.5% whiff rate with the curveball. I'm very in on Cameron Foster and Anthony Nunez. Just like, I love the story. Again, just a reminder to anyone who, after the trade deadline, we've talked about this, but he gets drafted by the Padres in 2019 as a hitter, is there for 3 years, goes back to college. He can't go D1 because he was a pro, but he could go D2 or below. So I think he went D2, but plays a couple of years there, converts to pitcher, gets signed as an undrafted free agent by the Mets, gets his feet wet last year with 10 innings, but this year was his first full pro season as a pitcher. He started in high A, he ended in AAA, 56 innings, a 2.06 ERA, 121 average against, a .81 whip, 83 strikeouts in 56 innings. I got Anthony Nunez as like his StatCast card. This looks like the electoral map of Wyoming. It's bright ash red everywhere and some faint blue here and there, like one faint blue line. That's about it. This is unbelievable. Like 96 mile an hour fastball. It's a one. You talk about stuff plus grade. Change up 107, slider 115, cutter 108. I mean, it's 97, 98, 99th percentile in virtually everything except, hitters make a lot of contact against him in the zone. Okay. But I mean, barrel percentage allowed 2.9% barrel rate against him. Hard hit rate, minuscule. The average EV was 86 miles per hour off the bat against Nunez. I mean, I can just go on and on. If I could show the image, apparently I can't. I would pull it up. We'll post it in Discord, post it on Twitter. It's unbelievable. This Nunez, this is a great find. And, you go back to that trade with the Mets and really all those arms that they acquired from the Mets outside of Aracena, a lot of them are Rule 5 eligible this offseason. And you figure when you look at it, it was Gregory Soto and Cedric Mullins who go over to New York. So, the quality that's going to come back isn't going to be great. So the Orioles went the Rule 5 route, guys who the Mets are probably much more willing to deal. And the Orioles nailed the guys that they targeted in those deals. They've shown nothing to the major league level yet, but I think both these guys, specifically Foster and Nunez, are going to definitely get that opportunity next year.
Yeah, I really like these guys, especially Nunez. Like you said, just whiff central. He's got 5 pitches. Like knowing the Orioles, I'm surprised they're not like, hey, you want to convert to a starting pitcher? But I think just with the lateness of becoming a pitcher and just the dominance he's shown and the fact that Felix might not be ready next year, he legitimately could be like major league closer by the end of 2026 with his stuff and just how fast he's improved and yada, yada, yada. But huge Nunez fan, gets a lot of swings and misses. And Foster, he's really interesting. Great fastball. middling other pitches, but it's like a really, if you look at his pitch plot, it's like really vertical attack. It's like down, it's like from top to bottom. He can attack you, get you spun around with, and he really got better in his time. I think he had a 3.38 ERA since we acquired him from the Mets in his time with Norfolk, and it seemed like he just got better and better the longer he was here. So I think him and the Orioles, good mix. Would not be surprised at all if I would not actually be surprised if he made his Orioles debut in the second half of this week. But I definitely think he's a serious candidate to be added to the 40-man, just like Nunez is a lock.
Yeah, I think both are legitimate candidates to be added. If I had to guess which one is more likely, I would lean towards Nunez because you look at his trajectory since he got back into pro ball as a pitcher. He has skyrocketed through the system. And Eric Longenhagen had written something up about him at Fangraphs that jumped out at me at the time of the trade, which is that when converted pitchers work out, they tend to work out immediately. And that seems to be the case with Nunez. And the numbers he put together this season in two different organizations across three levels were phenomenal. I think that he, I suspect the Orioles are going to be active enough in their bullpen this offseason that even if they protect him, he starts next year back in Norfolk. But I could see him getting a lot of big league innings next year and having that be a good thing. And with Foster, when that trade was done at the time, we had very limited StatCast data on Foster because he had had a couple of outings in AAA with the Mets in the first half of the season. And my impression at the time was, okay, the data is interesting even if the stats don't jump out at you right away. Let's see what he has. And the Orioles, and I think that this was a smart move, put him right in AAA and gave him a couple of months there to show what he has. And I was very impressed. I do think that, a lot of his pitch mix revolves around the fastball. I think that you both made good points there. Nunez has a deeper pitch mix, but Foster can consistently pump that mid to upper 90s. It has good movement. It's a really good pitch. And if this is a guy who at worst slots into an up and down role for you next year, he could be really helpful in that situation. So I think that both of these guys right now have very strong cases to be protected this offseason. And before we go into the awards for Norfolk, was there anything else in the pitching staff that stood out to either one of you guys, good or bad?
I got nothing. Just Cameron Foster was the only other name. I mean, unfortunately, we didn't get to see Armbruster this year. I'm going kind of through. No, the CNL Perez guy. I don't know who he is, but he looks like he got hurt. I know Bob's talked about this a lot lately. Like Carlos Tavera looked like he was really starting to show a little bit. And then I don't know what the injury was. He made some rehab appearances there at the end of the year, but really didn't get to see anything from him after, the first month of the season. But yeah, they, at least with anything with this Norfolk rotation, the true starting pitching prospects came up at the end of the year. They made their appearance. But as far as the bullpen goes, there's some real relief studs here to pay attention to.
I would like to shout out Alex Pham, who finally got a taste of AAA, and obviously very short sample size, only threw 63 pitches. But man, TJ Stats, his stuff is as good, if not better, than any of the other prospects. And maybe it's because he was in shorter stints and it was small sample size, but he had 5 pitches with better than 100 stuff plus between his changeup, his cutter, his curveball, his four-seamer, and his slider. Best pitches were four-seam, cutter at 108, changeup 107, slider 102, curveball 101. So that was a little surprising to me, and I like it.
We will go in now to our final segment of the night. Last call, brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Hopefully you've had some opportunities this year to enjoy Checker Spot at Oriole Park at Canham Yards. One of their signature beers, The Bird is a Word, was available behind home plate for pretty much all of this season. Their beers were featured elsewhere in the ballpark at various points and they're right near Canham Yards, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. They're going to have a lot of fun events over the off season, so be sure to check out their social media. And they are pretty much right in the shadow of M&T Bank Stadium. So if you go check out a heartbreaking Ravens game this year, be sure to stop by Checker Spot before or after the game. And now we will give out our awards for the Norfolk Tides this year. And as we have with the other affiliates in the Orioles farm system, we selected our hitter and pitcher of the year. And although I think it was tough for all three of us to decide on the hitter of the year, in the end, it goes to Samuel Basallo. While pitcher of the year, what was a little bit easier race, Cameron Weston gets the nod there. And we'll start with Basallo because for me, it was really, really hard to decide between Basallo and Beavers. I probably went back and forth on it 3 or 4 times before settling on Basallo, largely because what he accomplished this year, he did as a catcher, and he did at the young age of 20 in AAA. That was probably the separator for me, but I think you could have been justified in picking either of these guys. So, Bob, I'll start with you here. This was a fantastic season for Samuel Basallo. Very deserving of this award.
Yeah, like said earlier, just the dominance when he was on, when he was healthy, when he was in the lineup. I mean, I think I predicted he'd hit 30 home runs between all the levels. I don't think he quite got there. I'm checking my math here. He had 23 in the minors and then 4 more in the majors. So 27 home runs in 369 at bats. So pretty good right there. If he would have stayed healthy, he would have done it, but just absolute dominance when he was on the field. Yeah, Beavers was pretty close. Just the age and the position and the level of dominance that Samuel Basallo showed gave him the edge, but Beavers was no slouch, was really consistent, not quite to the level of Basallo, and obviously a little bit older, but a fantastic year in his own right.
Yeah, I mean, 23 home runs in 270 at bats. Beavers had 18 home runs in 70 more at bats. It was just, as far as like just, AAA hitter of the year, it was definitely between those two guys. And yeah, you consider the age, the position, and all that good stuff. Shout out to Samuel Basallo. And hopefully next year is a true breakout year, but at the major league level.
And for pitcher of the year, we went with Weston. And you could look at the Tide staff and say, well, this was the guy that was just the most consistent over the longest period of time. And that is true, but there were some positives to Weston's season that I think are really worth pointing out. 135 and a third innings pitched, led all Orioles minor leaguers in innings pitched this season. Combined, that was 133 strikeouts to 71 walks and a 4.59 ERA. I think some of the things we talked about tonight with pitchers struggling to adjust to the AAA baseball and to the strike zone probably came into play this season for Weston a little bit, but you look at the numbers that he put up this year, it was a solid year. And I think that if nothing else, this affirmed that this is a guy who can give you quality innings, and there's a clear path for him to get to the major leagues in, at very least, a bulk innings relief role and perhaps even a back-end starter. I do think he will probably need a little bit more AAA time before he gets that opportunity. But overall, positive year for Weston.
Absolutely. I could see him being like Albert Suarez type, obviously a little bit younger, a little bit less of a journey to get there, but a guy who can be a long man out of the bullpen, maybe could play up in a shorter stint just with his mix of pitches, but also step in and start when needed. I do like, first of all, that he got the 135 innings. That's pretty big to build on. He also ended pretty strong from the month of August until the middle of September when the season ended. He had a 3.69 ERA over 39 innings pitched with 34 strikeouts. And if you go just in September alone, he got 3 starts, 16.2 innings pitched, 12 strikeouts. He did walk 10 batters, not great, but a 1.62 ERA. So, end of the year strong, go into the offseason and try to just continue to slightly improve. Try to get that walk rate down, even if the strike zone is smaller, and get that strikeout rate up a little bit.
Yeah, really great to see the 135 innings because he gets drafted in 2022. 2023 was kind of injury-riddled year. It only threw 43 innings. People started taking notice of him last year because he stayed healthy and pitched really well in the lower levels of the system. And this year, like you mentioned, the strong end to the year, his his last start was 7 innings. I don't know if his last start was one of his final starts. So 7 innings, 1 run. Like, yeah, the walks were up, but like it's still overall strikeout rate, 22% strikeout rate for the year, which is well below the 28% strikeout rate. And the walk rate did climb up. It was almost 12%. And for his career, he's been around 8%. But I do think he provides good value as a depth starter. I think can log some good innings. But I agree that I think he does have a larger path to the big leagues as a reliever. And because he throws 6 pitches at least, if not 7 pitches. And they're pretty much all 50 grade offerings across the board, depending on which outlet you look at in their scouting grades. But I just think it's a very, I don't know if he has that offering, that there's not that plus offering in his repertoire, but it's 6 plus offerings, all 45, 55 grade. And you look at, maybe he comes in after the starter, gets a couple lazy pop-ups, a couple ground balls, because the ground ball rate went down, but he still gets ground balls at a near 50% clip. He's got the unique arm angle. He's got the wide repertoire. If you need to go east, west, north, south, whatever direction you need a pitch to go in, he can throw that. And you look at some of his StatCast numbers, and behind the baseball card stats, so what stood out to me is, the ERA, the walk rate, the strikeout rate maybe didn't pop this year, but he was 96th percentile in hard hit percentage, 82nd percentile in barrel percentage, and 92nd percentile in average exit velo. So when opponents did make contact against him, they really struggled to barrel him up and make quality contact. So I think that's promising. That's what I look at as potentially promising, especially in 1-2 innings. And, if he's on your major league roster and things get out of control early and a starter gets pulled in, second or third inning, he can help save that bullpen with 4+ innings a night if you need him to. But I do think he could provide a fun, little bit of a unique look in a relief role and get you 1-2 good, solid, quick innings and then pass it off to the back end of the bullpen. So we'll see if he gets that shot, though, if the Orioles decide to protect him this offseason.
Maybe a right-handed Keegan Aiken, but before he was used in high leverage since the trade deadline.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with Weston in that Rule 5 consideration. And as is the case with a lot of players we've talked about tonight, that's going to be a topic of conversation going into the offseason. And for that does it for this week's episode. We will be back later on this week to break down our awards for the year. In the meantime, you can follow us on our many social media accounts, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community today. You can sign up at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to monthly top 50 updates, as well as much more bonus coverage throughout the offseason. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phil and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Ever felt defeated by cravings? You're not alone. Henry Meds is here to help support your weight management journey.
Since I joined 4 months ago, I've lost 25 pounds and it has changed my life.
Henry Med's personalized compounded GLP-1 meds shipped to your door. Take back control with treatments designed to reduce appetite. Schedule a free online evaluation with a licensed provider at henrymeds.com/audio and get $100 off your first month. Results may vary. Not all patients are eligible. Compounded medications are not FDA approved. Consult a healthcare provider to determine if treatment is right for you.
Sleeping hot and sweaty, tossing and turning all night is like being on a team that never has home field advantage. You're losing before the day even begins. It's time to reverse the curse and solve your sweaty sleep problems with Coop Sleep Goods. Their entire cooling collection, including pillows, sheets, and more, is equipped with cool-to-the-touch technology that actually stays cool all night long, no matter your sleep style. Their award-winning pillows are customizable for side, back, stomach, or combo sleepers. Put an end to thermostat wars and stop flipping to the cool side of the pillow. Save the sweat for big presentations in the boardroom or pickup ball in the rec room. Visit CoopSleepGoods.com/sports to get 20% off your first order. If you don't sleep cooler and better, return it risk-free with their 100-night sleep better guarantee. That's COOP Sleepgoods.com/sports.